Now we have a look at the Linux file system structure. Basically, the file system is structured like a tree. That means we have a root and then we have multiple children basically, or directories which come under that root node, or also files, and each of this directory again has multiple subnodes or subdirectories. You can also have a look at the image provided below the video. We can also have a look at that directly in the terminal, for example by using the tree command that we can see here, and this basically means print us the tree structure with a depth of 1 from the root node. So the slash always means it's the absolute root of the file system. So we press that, then we see here at the top we have the root, and like a tree we have multiple branches or directories which come after the root node or are connected to it, which is the bin folder, the boot folder, the etc folder, and so on. And so these files or these directories, most of them are not really relevant for you, so you don't have to understand what all of that is. Important is, for example, /etc, because there are multiple configuration files that we will use throughout the course, but we will tell you if we need them. So you will sometimes work in that directory. We also have, for example, the boot directory, which is something you should never touch because there are files required for booting the VLAB, and if you tamper something in there, it might cause the VLAB to no longer work, so keep away. We have, for example, the var directory, and there's a subdirectory var www where we put, for example, configuration things for the web server, which we will use in part 5, I think. And we have the /root directory here, which is the home folder of the root user. So as you can see here, currently we are logged in as root user, and here we see our current directory where the terminal currently is located or connected to, and that tilde means the home folder of the current user, so the root user. So basically the tilde is the same as /root, because we are currently in folder / and then the root folder. And in this case the tilde is the same as /root, so you could also use tilde / is the same as /root / in that case. We also have the home folder here, and in the home folder we have the home folders for all the regular users. So in our case, for example, the ilab user, and therefore we have, for example, /home /ilab as home folder if we would be logged in as ilab user, and then again the tilde would be equal to /home /ilab depending on the user that is logged in, just as a kind of abbreviation. Good. Then we can also have a look, for example, if we look at the tree in a depth of 2. So if you would look at the complete tree, it would just be too large because there are too many files and directories. Even if we do that, we would see, okay, there are lots of files and directories, but if you just look at the bottom, so for example in the var directory we again have multiple other directories or files in it. For example, the www directory we talked about, where the configuration or the source files, for example HTML files for the web server that are served, lies in. We can also just type tree to get the tree representation outgoing from our current directory, which is the home directory of root. And if we do that, then we see, okay, in the root directory we have a subdirectory 2 and 3 and 4, and in these again we have some files and some other subdirectories, and currently these subdirectories here do not have any more directories or files in them. But here we can see the tree structure nicely with the start of the /root node. So if we basically, this structure would be below that root node here. Now, how can we navigate through this kind of structure? One of the most important commands you will use is ls, as list, or you can just quickly press Ctrl L to clear the terminal, so it's also always helpful. If we type ls, that lists the content of the current directory, in this case of our home directory of the root user. And that shows us, okay, we have the 4 subdirectories in here. We can also use ls followed by the path of the directory we want to see the contents. So for example, /root /subdir, and then again press enter, and then we see, okay, in that subdirectory here we have these 2 files and 2 other subdirectories. What we can also do, that's true for almost all commands where you need to give the path of a directory or a file. You can either give the full path starting with the root of the complete file system, so / followed by the directory that comes afterwards, for example root or /home, and then so on, so in this case the subdirectory. Or we can also do a relative path, so this means if we don't start with a /, it is relative to our current directory. So currently we are already in the home directory, and if we just type subdir, it knows, okay, there is a subdir directory, and just prints the same. So basically these 2 commands are identical if we are in the home folder. We could also write the // which also means home directory, which is /root in this case, because we are the root user, and then from there on continue. So these are all valid ways to specify the same directory here. You can also use ls-l, so as an additional parameter, and then again give the path of whatever you want to see. So for example, a subdir, and then you get it as a nice list where you also see what is the size of a file. In this case, our files are empty and the subdirectories are also empty, and these are the access rights that are set on these files and directories, and you can see when they were created. Next, you can change between different directories. So you can use cd for change directory, and then again give the path of the directory where you want to change to. So for example, if we want to change to /home /ilab, you also see that we also get already the proportion to use /ilab. You can also just press tab to autocomplete that, or what you can also do is /I, we can press Control arrow to the right to autocomplete it. And now we changed the directory, so you can see now here is a bit abbreviated. We have the /home /ilab is our current directory, and we can also use /tilde, for example, to go back to our home directory. What we can also do is use cd ... which means go up 1 layer in the tree hierarchy. So now, as you can see, we are in the root directory. And if we check it now, we can see these are all the directories contained in the root directory, and we can also go back to /tilde, which is our home directory. In order to know where we currently are, we can either look at this part of the terminal, or we can just enter pwd, which is a print working directory, which is currently /root, which is our home directory as root user, and therefore the tilde. Next, how can we handle files and directories? So we can create new directories by using the command make dir, and then for example, so you can also see here, this is a command I used earlier to create these subdirectories. We can just give the path of the directory that we want to create, so either again the full path with /root/ whatever, or just relative to our current directory, which is already /root, and create, for example, a directory new dir. If you check it with ls, we see, okay, here we have the new directory created. We can also create new empty files by using touch, and then the file name, new file.txt, for example. So the .text is optional, it's just any arbitrary file. And if we check it again, we see, okay, we created the new text file here. We can move files around. So for example, we can move the new file .text. Also again, notice that I use the tab for auto completion. And move that file around, for example, or let's move it to our new directory, and just move it there. So if the ending / is important, otherwise it would just rename new file.txt to new dir. But with the ending / it knows, okay, this is a directory, I have to move it into that directory. And if we now check the new dir, we see, okay, the file is there, and if we check our current directory, the file is gone here. We can also use copy, or maybe better first, let's move new dir new file to new dir new file name.txt. So we can also use it to rename files. If we specify the file name here, just press enter and check the new dir again, and now we see, okay, the file, it's exactly the same from the content, which is currently none, and was just renamed from new file to new file name.txt. We can also use copy to not move a file around, but create a copy of it. So if you use subdir / new file, subdir, new dir, it's new dir, new file name, and then move it to our current directory and call it copied file.txt, and check it via ls. We can see, okay, now we have the file here, and if we check the new dir directory, the old file also still exists. So we created a new copy of the file. And you can also move around complete directories by using cp-r. So r means recursive, so not just a directory, but also all contents of the directory. And move new dir to copied dir. And if we check it, then we can see we have the new dir, and we also have the copied directory, and in the copied directory we also have still the file that was also copied. We can also delete stuff by using rm for remove. For example, we can remove the copied file.txt and check it and see, okay, now the copied file.txt is gone. And we can also use rm-r for recursive again and remove the copied directory, press enter, and now the copied directory is also deleted. So be aware, unlike Windows, there is no easy thing like a trash, so whatever you delete with remove is basically gone. So there are ways to recover things, but they are not as easily as looking it up in a trash can. You can print the content of a file using cut. So let's, for example, use /etc/host file as an example. So we'll see that in week 5, I guess. And there you can see, okay, this is the text that stands in that file. And we can also use less on the same file to have it in a more convenient way, because it's lots of text, and now we can scroll up and down using the arrow keys, and we can press Q to leave it again. Good, that's for the navigation. I hope this should have explained you the basics, and in the next part we have a look at how we can actually edit or create new files.